Hey, fellas, welcome back. It's Regal, coach of the Houston Hacks, and I guess we're doing daily uploads now. No, my games got put right next to each other on the schedule, so we're bringing you week 4 action from the National Pokemon Draft League. And this time we are playing against Yeezus. Okay, Yeezus is a new player to our league, and I'm just not familiar with playing him yet. And so he does have a very, very scary team. And prepping for him, I really had to be very, very careful for his major threats. So, number one, Corviknight, and number two, Dugtrio. Okay, though that combination, especially when Corviknight is weak to electric, okay, something that Dugtrio takes care of. And fire, another thing that Dugtrio takes care of. That combination is super, 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 super deadly, especially when Dugtrio can trap something and then make sure that it can get rid of it instantly. And so I had to really kind of play around in my head how I was gonna go about dealing with the Dugtrio. In prep, I actually and I wrote it down, but Scarf did make sense because then it could come in on Jolteon and kill it 100% of the time. But I just knew he would lose a lot of power on that, so I was looking at it potentially being either Banded or Focus Sash as well, as I thought those were good items that it could run. So what I wound up doing, and I really had to play in prep and just basically lose my Jolteon to a Scarf Dugtrio. But I had originally brought Shed Shell Arcanine, but then I decided to bring two Shed Shells because I just needed as many answers to the Corviknight as possible, as that thing is just an insane threat, especially when you start doing calcs. Especially defensive Corviknight just does not die; it just refuses to die. So it's very, very scary mon. If you do not bring coverage for it, it will just beat you. It will just 1v6 your entire team. So Jolteon and Arcanine I knew would be good off the bat. I just needed to bring Shed Shell on them in order to avoid the death to Dugtrio, because Dugtrio is just such a big threat. Then next, looking at his team, of course, I always want to bring Mew. I was very unsure on the Mew set until Sorbs actually was able to convince me to go a sweeping Mew set. Originally, I had like a Taunt, U-turn, Toxic Spikes Mew, mainly because Toxic Spike hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of his Pokemon. Granted, Renequist would not take toxic damage if he was running Magic Guard. But we are playing the best defogger, I believe, in the game or in the format. So I decided that I was only going to wind up bringing rocks on my Claydol, as that is always my glue. With pretty much all my teams, I just have a hard time not bringing Claydol with Rapid Spin and Stealth Rocks, as that is my only Stealth Rocker unless I want to bring Mew as a Stealth Rocker. So that kind of built up my backbone of my team. And as you've seen in the past, I bring Drampa almost every single week. I find its resistances and its ability to tank hits and then dish back a ton of damage pretty lethal. And so I did wind up selecting for Drampa. Grimmsnarl, who I've kind of figured to be an awkward mon for me. Honestly, considering kind of getting rid of it, even though it was my second pick, but it really wound up putting in work this game. So those were the six I brought: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Things that I thought were a threat. I thought Whimsicott, Dugtrio, Dracozolt, Seismitoad, Corviknight, and then I thought the last mon would be Renequist. Those were the six I thought he was going to bring. He did surprise me, bringing the Flareon, which actually turns out to be a decent special wall, especially with being able to Wish Pass and then deal some decent damage as well with that base 130 attack. So I wasn't super scared of Trevenant, as I did have answers to it with the Blade and Glossopod. All the things I didn't wind up bringing were actually really, really good against his bottom couple mons, the Trevenant, the Glossopod. But the Graplock. did not. Graplock would have really surprised me, uh, just because it's not very fast, and I had a lot of things I could hit it hard, especially with my 3 psychic types now that I have, which is still don't know how I feel about that. But all right, let's move into more details on my team and what I brought. As you can see, major threats on his team, and one that I haven't even mentioned. I don't even know why, but this guy right here, this Dracozolt, is nasty. It does a ton of damage. So I knew Claydol was going to be my answer to checking that thing. All right, so let's skip on over to the team builder and jump right in. So Jolteon, Milner here. I originally had a cool, more offensive set with Jolteon, with like a more offensive item at least, but I opted to bring the Shed Chill as that was kind of costing me games against in prep, not being able to deal with that, being able to deal with the Doug Trio, excuse me. Volt Switch, as it seemed necessary if I could get rid of Doug Trio, but Shadow Ball and Hyper Voice to hit the majority of his team and get as much damage as possible. The Mew set was pretty interesting, and what it came down to is I wound up going screens on Grimmsnarl. As you can see, screens on Grimmsnarl, and then I wound up going with setup Mew. I figured that the Dragon Dance plus this coverage, which Mew can bring insane coverage every single week, had the potential to either break for my team or sweep at the very end of the game. Now, the Mew never got to see the light of day, unfortunately, but that's just how it goes sometimes. You can't bring, sometimes your most offensive mon doesn't get to see the game. Claydol was interesting. I usually like to bring a lot of coverage for things, especially when opponents think that they're safe against my fat stuff. But I had to go max HP, max defense because of that Dracozolt. It just hit too hard otherwise. And then the bread and butter of Rapid Spin and Stealth Rocks was huge for me. Just the amount of value that you can get by removing the other team's hazards and then putting up your own is pretty awesome. Looking into my Arcanine, I really did consider getting rid of Intimidate and putting up Flash Fire, but I figured I might need to use the Intimidate on a couple Mons, Flareon, Seismitoad if it was physical, and especially Dracozolt and Doug Trio. So I kept Intimidate even though the Corviknight could run the Mirror Armor and weaken my attack stat, my own Intimidate on it. But again, a risk that I just decided to take. I made the Arcanine really offensive because I did not want the Corviknight setting up on me. I wanted to, when I did get a chance to hit that thing, absolutely blow it up. And fire coverage actually hits Yeezus' team pretty hard across the board, especially pressuring Seismitoad, which doesn't really get good recovery. So moving on, Grimmsnarl actually turned out to really be the MVP of the game. Putting up screens, taking a bunch of hits, even with it being pretty offensive. I did bring enough speed to outspeed the Corviknight and the Darkest Lariat in case he started bulking up on me. So I could almost always break a sub with this set. But being able to put up this light screen and reflect, was huge, especially in combination with my Mew and also my other hard-hitting Mon, my Drampa. So Drampa, again, running Berserk. I think Whimsicott would always use a fairy move on me, so no reason to run Sap Sipper here. But Drampa, again, bringing all the coverage in the world. I don't think you can see that it does have an Assault Vest here in the corner. But the Assault Vest just allows it to take so many more hits, especially with screens up. Now Drampa's always going to take usually more than one hit unless it's super effective. And dishing back usually 50% or more against everything against his team with the coverage. Again, we'll see that Hyper Voice really comes in handy here. But yeah, double Shed Shell, Rocky Helmet for the Dracozolt, and finally the screens plus setup Mew was the team that we decided to bring. Let's go to, excuse me, not there. Where's my battle at? Again, I must have forgot to set up the battle. My bad. Oh, it's right here. There we go. All right, so turn one. I didn't really know what to lead. I thought about leading Mew to try to scare off the Seismitoad, but I didn't want to bring my setup sweeper in right away. I could have tried to set up turn one, but taking a Scald was just too big too big of a problem for me. In hindsight, I think Drampa actually was a pretty good lead, although Scarf Dracozolt did make a lot of sense for him. So going into, let's just play it. I do elect to get screens up right away. He goes for the Toxic, which I'm okay with. I didn't really think my Grimmsnarl would last super long in this game, but I was able to bring in my Drampa quickly. He does get a crit there. Obviously, I don't take anything because of Assault Vest, and I start dishing out Hyper Voices. So I do 49, and I decide I'm just going to try to get this 2-hit KO. I miss it the first time, and I decide I'm going to just keep hitting Hyper Voice. I did wind up kelking, and it really depended on his special defense. I don't think he was max special defense, and so it did make sense that I would kill eventually if he stayed in, or something would have to take a Hyper Voice, which nothing on his team really did want to take Hyper Voice. I mean, Corviknight could take it, but then after I would send out a Flamethrower. Regardless, he sends in his Dracozolt, and I get the Flamethrower off. Here, let's go back turn. Okay, so Flareon dies to the Hyper Voice. He brings in Corviknight, which I was super surprised by. He was just scouting for my Flamethrower, which was a good play on his part, especially with the Wish coming in on Dracozolt. It was a free scout for him. I'm able to get in my Heimdall. Luckily, he goes for Bolt Beak. He did not want to commit to the Outrage at this point in the game, but I'm able to get a Rapid Spin off and then surprise him with the Grass Knot. I did not put any offensive prowess in my Claydol, which is fine. I think 47% was enough, and that should have told me that it was specially defensive Seismitoad. I never calced that, but now in hindsight, I see that. This switch was unfortunate as I did break sub, but I didn't want to deal with, and I thought he might sub there, so I did pack the Roar just in case something started setting up. Able to get Claydol in. He takes Rocky Helmet damage, which is pretty huge, plus Life Orb. I know he's locked in now, and I do go for the Darkest Lariat. Now, my calc with Freyr here, or Grimmsnarl, I believe was doing around 50-some odd percent, and all I needed to do is put him into range where rocks would kill him. And so what I decided to do is take that damage. Now, what happened is I crit him, and I just didn't have to deal with it. But I wouldn't have killed on that hit, and he would have had a potential to come in on 1% health and try to do something later. I do get up my Reflect again, and I'm able to switch into Jolteon here on the Ironhead. Jolteon applying quite a bit of pressure. I knew he couldn't risk Corviknight, so I decided to go for the Shadow Ball. Unfortunately for my opponent, I do get the stat drop, and I'm able to just send off another Shadow Ball. I do have the Kelk here against his Seismitoad. If it was specially defensive, I believe it would have lived. I think what happened was he was max Spadef. So at 26% health, as long as he had 196 or higher, and that's without the nature invested, I only did 21 to 25 there. So I would not have killed. I would have put him down to 1 health and risked being KO'd myself. So I definitely would have switched out. I think I had options. I don't think it obviously just made it very, very difficult for Yeezus to kind of get out of that game. So anyways, he brings in the Dugtrio. This is where I reveal my Shed Shell. Luckily, Freyr doesn't die to 2 Earthquakes, and I'm able to get off the Darkest Lariat and knock him out. I thought about going for the Sucker Punch, but Darkest Lariat just made the most sense as it did kill him, and I thought with the roll I would survive. Here I get lucky that he brings out his Corviknight. I knew I couldn't let that thing set up at any point, and I knew that Jolteon with Shadow Ball plus Thunderbolt was able to at least hit his Renoquist pretty hard. I believe his Renoquist could have set up Trick Room here, or he could have brought his Renoquist in, and then I could have I would have clicked Shadow Ball. You'll see on the next turn, I do wind up doing about 49%. He uses Psyshock, which makes me think that it is, I don't know if it was Specs or not. I'm sure it was just Life Orb. But if he did decide to Trick Room up, I did have Extreme Speed with Arcanine here. Luckily, pick up the win. As my Jolteon does go down, I bring in Arcanine. I don't save myself differential here. I think Mew might have been able to do it with its Flare Blitz as well, but I didn't want to risk anything or give him any hope. So I just bring in and get 2 kills with Arcanine to finish off the game. All right, guys. I enjoy doing these. I hope you guys can either learn something or just get a better idea of how that I prepare, and then just compare and try to get better as a community. Love the league, and look forward to making more of these games or more of these videos and playing in this league. See you guys later. Peace.